Hello, my name is Frank Christensen and I'm the coordinator of officials for IFAF in Europe. This is the last installment of a 5-tape series on defensive offside. Today we're looking at neutral zone infraction, or rather we're looking at when should we call it a false start, when is it a defensive offside for neutral zone infraction, and when should we go with a delay of game on the defense. But before we get there, let's have a look at what the MOFO and the rulebook have to say.
In the rulebook, we go to Rule 218.2, defensive offside on a scrimmage play. Article 2 says, after the ball is ready for play, offside occurs when a defensive player, A, is in or beyond the neutral zone when the ball is legally snapped. B, contacts an opponent beyond the neutral zone before the ball is snapped. C, contacts the ball before it is snapped. D, threatens an offensive lineman, causing an immediate reaction before the ball is snapped. Or E, crosses the neutral zone and charges towards a teammate back. Rule 715 talks about B requirements. Players aligned in a stationary position within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage may not make quick, abrupt, or exaggerated actions that are not part of normal defensive player movement. In the MOFO, we go to 344 dealing with offsides. A, when a defensive player before the snap moves and an offensive player subsequently moves, a conference between the umpire and the wing is mandatory. This is to determine if the defensive player was in the neutral zone and if the offensive player was threatened. When in question, the offensive player is threatened. If the team A player who first moved is not threatened, it is a false start. B says, when a defensive player before the snap crosses the neutral zone and charges towards a team A back, it is a dead ball offside foul. The time to call this as a foul is when the defender passes the hip of the nearest team A lineman. C goes on to say, don't rule a defensive player offside if he is stationary and only intruding on the neutral zone by a trivial amount. D, don't be picky about offside, particularly on fields that are not marked perfectly. And E says, don't call offside if the defensive player is moving forward at the snap but is not actually in the neutral zone. And finally, 13.2 dealing with responsibilities for wings on basic scrimmage plays says, observing offside and other line of scrimmage infractions by Team B players, especially those between you and the ball. So as a wing, you are primarily responsible for anything that happens between you and the ball, and secondarily responsible for what happens on the other side of the ball. So your most of your focus should be on your side of the ball. And that was the book. Now let's have a look at some game film. In this first example, we're looking at primarily the defensive line, and we notice that from a stationary position, at least one, maybe even a couple of defensive players go across the line of scrimmage, go across the neutral zone, and cause an immediate response or reaction from the offensive line. So we have this this action, reaction, and we have defense in the neutral zone. Same teams, same game. We're looking at the defensive end here, causing a reaction from the tight end. So again, we have the action by the defense, the reaction by the offense. Now, you may argue, and this is a little difficult to see from this angle, does the defender get into the neutral zone? Our philosophy says that if we have any doubts whether we want to put it on the defense or put it on the offense, we're going to lean towards pinning it on the defense. So if we have doubts here, if he gets into the neutral zone or not, we're going to say that by philosophy he did when we have this clear action reaction like we do here. So correct call, defensive offside, neutral zone infraction. Another example where we don't have the perfect angle, but I put this in here just to illustrate that the first movement here by the defense where they move laterally is okay. So if the offense reacts to this movement, it would be a false start on the offense. But right there, when the defense moves forward and most likely into the neutral zone and the offensive guard reacts, now we have a defensive offside neutral zone infraction. We're now moving into the false starts, and we still have movement on both sides of the field, but here it's pretty clear that the guard here moves first. So we don't have the same action by the defense, reaction by the offense. So this is clearly a false start by this guard. Another false start, but at first glance this really looks like a neutral zone infraction. It looks like the defense moves into the neutral zone, causing the offense to react. But if we pay close attention to the center, you'll notice that he actually makes a little lean back or a little dip right before the defense moves, and that's most likely what caused the defense to move. So a good example of a situation where it really is important for the wings, for the umpire to really pay close attention to your own keys so that you don't miss a small movement like this. So the correct call here is a false start by the center. Here we're looking at primarily, or first, the nose tackle who's going to move sideways, and that is a perfectly legal movement to make. Now if we look at the guard across from him, he actually reacts, he flinches a little bit, and even though we have movement by the defense first, since this is a lateral move and not at all going into the neutral zone or even getting close to the neutral zone, this is going to be ruled correctly as a false start on this guard, because we cannot argue that he was threatened by this defensive move. So here, false start on the guard. Here's another false start, and the reason is, as you will see, we don't have that action reaction. In fact, on the tackle away from the camera, both the offensive tackle and the defensive end move at the same time, and when they move at the same time, just like in this example, we're going to put it on the offense, because keep in mind, defensive movement is not illegal in itself, whereas the offensive movement is illegal in itself. So here is a false start by this tackle. Here's another false start by the tackle on this side of the ball, and as you can see, we actually have defensive movement first, but on the complete opposite side over by the other tackle, and this near tackle cannot be threatened by him. And we actually also have false start by the wingback, but he's in the backfield, so he's out of this equation. But I included this example just to illustrate that there are a maximum of 3 offensive players that can be threatened by the defensive movement, and they have to be, more or less across from each other. So when we have defensive movement all the way over there, and then the offense reacts here, this is going to be always a false start. Here's another false start, but if you look in the box, it actually looks like a neutral zone infraction. It looks like we have defensive movement and then offensive reaction. But if you look at the slot back here closest to the camera, he actually moves at the same time as everybody else on the defensive side, at least. So once it gets time for the wings and the umpire to discuss what's going on. It's fairly efficient for the wing down here just to say, well, I have a receiver moving, and that typically trumps everything else that happened in the box. So here we have a false start on the slot back. In this last example of false start, we're looking at the wingback A88 there, and I just included this one to illustrate that even though we have clear action by the defense and clear reaction by the offense, and I don't think either there is any doubt that the defender is in the neutral zone, the fact that A88 is in his backfield excludes him from this rule. So only offensive players on the line of scrimmage can react and still pin it on the defense. So if an offensive player in the offensive backfield or at least somebody who's not on the line of scrimmage moves, then regardless of what the defense did, this is going to be a false start on A88. The defensive end here is going to illustrate right there what a defensive delay of game is, because that flinch right there is not football related. It is not because he's anticipating the snap. His only intention here is to get the offensive player to move, and right there is the proof that this is what his intention was, and now he's very happy with himself. But really what we should do here is call this as a delay of game on the defense. In this final play, we have a similar situation where the defender, B7 in this case, his only intention is to make the offense move, and this flinch has nothing to do with football. So really all it does is delay the game, which is why we want to call this as a delay of game on the defense. And that was this training tape. I hope you found something you can use on the field.